Hey, Bastish Beer for 64K and welcome to episode number 29 of Pop Culture Quick Bytes. And welcome back. So in today's episode we're going to have a look at the Commodore 64 Guide to Mastertronic, released by Fusion Retro Books in 2022. So this book is over 500 pages long. It's dedicated to the history of Mastertronic. If you're not familiar with them, they were a software house from the 80s and early 90s. They mainly put out budget titles, really cheap games on the 8-bit computers of the time, Commodore 64, Amstrad and Spectrum mainly. This book, however, is dedicated to all the games released on the Commodore 64, and it also gives a brief history of Mastertronic themselves. Okay, so let's first take a look at this book physically before we go on and check out some of its main features. And here's some of the main features at the back: over 800 screenshots, 230 cover scans, and a whole bunch of the most prominent games. The pages are nice and thick, and it has that cool glossy style to them. And here's some of the Mastertronic logo over the years, plus their sub-labels which they helped set up. And as you can see, the contents not only covers the games, but also all the sub-labels and a whole bunch of other little peripherals and adverts and all those kind of things. And it was put together by Colin Poole. And here's Colin here with his actual collection, and him back in 1984 playing some Mastertronic games. And here's some of my Mastertronic collection I've collected over the years. I've played a lot of their games, but after going through this book I've realized I've only actually played a small portion of their games, which is pretty crazy. Okay, so let's go check out how they set out all the reviews in this book for the games. And this is something cool I've never seen in any other retro books, an actual sales chart. So they got information for how well each one of these games sold. They were able to contact the financial controller for Mastertronic, and we still had all the records of that, which I think is awesome. And the reviews have a little bit of box art on the left, basic information on the game, also the kind of background story. And at the bottom of the page you have a little review of one of the guests or Colin himself. And then on the right you have nice big screenshots of the game, usually a quote from a magazine review, and also the controls for the game, which I thought is pretty cool. And there also includes all the re-release games, like this is Rescue on Fractalus by Lucasfilm. And it also includes some old adverts that used to appear in gaming magazines. I remember the one on the left distinctly. And a little rundown on each one of the labels that they set up. This is for MAD. They published a lot of cool games on this label. Last V8 was one of my favorites. And here's a little rundown on Invader Load. That was a Space Invaders clone that you could play while games loaded up, and also a list of all the games it appeared in. Some more adverts. I remember this one also. I think it was in a CNVG magazine I saw that. And again, some more of the other labels like Entertainment USA and of course Ricochet. Here's a bunch of rare and hard to find games, the physical versions at least. And of course 5 are the worst, but let's be honest, with Mastertronic there's way more than that. And it also has this really cool collector's game checklist. It lists every single game in this book, therefore every single Commodore 64 Mastertronic release. So if you're trying to collect these, this is a perfect guide. So this book was written by Colin Poole. This is like his memories of Mastertronic, playing the games, collecting them and all that. He gathered a whole bunch of other prominent C64 writers to help him out with this book. You know, put in reviews and just information about Mastertronic in general. What I really like about this book is that there is a lot of information in here. It is jam-packed. What's cool is that there's information here that you don't usually find in these kinds of books. There's information like on each page when they do a review, it has like the controls of, you know, on the Commodore 64, it had keyboard controls, what you had to press to do certain things. So it's almost like a little guide to these games as well. What's also cool is it has sales reports from how well these games sold, and it has like a ranking, so you can see how popular which ones were. You don't ever see that really in these kinds of books. I'm quite impressed that they managed to dig up that information about these games, especially Mastertronic games. I always found them to be like a little bit obscure, you know. They were cheap games that you could buy everywhere, but you know, they're not as like prominent as say like something by Ocean. So the fact that they had all that information, they could find it, is pretty damn cool. My overall thoughts on this book though is it's extremely impressive. I just love the amount of information they have packed in here. It's a lot. If you're a content producer for YouTube and you want to make some sort of video on Mastertronic, this is an excellent tome. It's just full of information. If you're just curious about Mastertronic and want to know a bit about their background, and especially obviously all the games they put out on the Commodore 64, this is a mammoth tome filled with information. I played a lot of Mastertronic games back in the day. I've probably played 50% of the games in this book, which is crazy. You know, the Commodore 64, I've played it since, you know, 1983, 82-ish, and I still haven't even, like, played half the games, and this is just another example of how many games are still out there that I haven't played yet, which is crazy, because I consider myself, you know, I've played a lot. One of the reviews, though, does have the wrong screenshots for the game. It comes off a little bit amateurish. I'm sure it was just a mess up with the printing. Hopefully if they print a second edition they can fix that, and then this book is pretty much perfect. But putting that minor niggle aside, I'd highly recommend you check it out. And I'll leave a link in the video description to check this out from Fusion Retro Books. Thanks again for joining me, Bastish B at 64K. I hope you had a good time. If you can please like and subscribe, they'll be greatly appreciated. I'll see you next time. Cheers.